Casey, Missouri created this very broad vision for how we can get off fossil fuels, and the city council adopted it in August. So she just worked so hard, and I was just so blown away by her. So I thought, well, I'm gonna work with them. And I also do some work with the Citizens Climate Lobby, which has had much more of a national focus, but I think they're deciding now that you can actually make more difference if you work on local issues, which is really, I think, a big part of the emphasis of Mothers Out Front. It's a national group. Oh, let's see, is this?
Yeah, we can get in there, why don't you?
Is this what I?
There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, so it's a group that actually started in Boston. In fact, a friend of mine who lives in Boston told me a couple years ago, I'm working with this great group called Mothers Out Front, and we are getting rid of gas, and we're doing all these fantastic things. And so when I found out there was a chapter here, I knew I needed to plug in with them. So anyway, it's a national group with it's just in a few states, and fortunately we have a chapter here now, which was started by, I think by Robin Canal and another woman here. So anyway, we have a very local focus. We feel like we can just get a better handle on what's happening locally, and we can have a bigger voice with what's happening locally. So although we are called Mothers Out Front, we're really mothers and others out front. We have people, women without kids, we have a few men, and we're certainly happy to have more. We just need anybody who is concerned about this issue and wants to make some noise about it. I would say we come from a point of view of being very concerned about the people who are coming after us. So the first chapter was founded in 2013. So Robin founded a chapter in Southern California, then she came and she started one here, and she's a woman with an amazing amount of energy, and I think she's at this point still trying to recover from putting together the climate plan for Kansas City, because that was a really grueling job, which she did a great job on.
But it's worth pointing out that we're a fairly young organization within Kansas City, even though this broader national has been around. It's kind of amazing that you can get your act together a little bit in 2 years, less than 2 years really, and start to make an impact.
Yeah. Okay, so as I said, we sound maybe kind of exclusive, but we actually are not. We're interested in anybody who wants to work with us on this issue. We work in Kansas and Missouri. We've got members in both states, and we know there are issues that we need to work on in both states. So we don't have a preference for one or the other. And we also really look for other entities and people to work with. And I have to say, it's kind of been my feeling. I've been involved in the environmental community here for a long time, and I really feel like we're getting our act together. I feel like we've got a bunch of organizations that really all have this agenda and have been working together, and you go to a meeting at the city council and there's people from Sunrise, from Sierra, from Citizens Climate Lobby, from the Mothers, and I have been very heartened to see how many different groups are really on the same page and making contact with each other and doing things together, because that's the only way we're going to get it done. And we are interested in finding more organizations that want to join with us. And so we're thinking about, some groups that are not necessarily just environmental, but might have some interest in that. Churches, neighborhood associations, schools. We want to join in with any of those groups that share our agenda here. I know you will say anything else.
I think it's sort of, you think of a homeowners association and you can go out to Johnson County, or you can go enter Jackson County, and what homeowners associations really want at the end of the day may vary, but there are common threads, and there's a lot of overlap. So if some of us want to focus on energy and renewables, that's gonna have overlap with people who want fewer emissions coming out of cars when they go to pick up their kid at school. And it's about finding common threads, and you're not gonna share everything, and you're not necessarily even going to share perspective on exactly how a climate plan is gonna go, but, in other words, we could just have our own isolated bugbears, but instead it's better to at least have, friendly contact with other people who might share in that thread.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, and so I just wanted to quote Margaret Mead on something. If we ever have a doubt that we can make a difference on things, I think we just have to remind ourselves of Margaret Mead. Because I've seen that happen. I mean, I feel like we've actually really focused on some issues here, and I think that we have made a difference, and that's pretty invigorating. One of the issues that we worked on, so one of the issues we worked on was getting a climate plan passed for Kansas City, Missouri, and this thing just went on for, I don't know, a year or two, and it was, I think, just a real slog for the people who were on this committee, but I think they came up with a really good plan, and I think it's given us a pretty good vision of sort of where to go. We need to look at energy use, we need to look at coal plants, we need to look at bike lanes, we need to look at trees, and so now the trick is going to be getting the city to actually move ahead on those things, because of course it doesn't have to carry out the climate plan, but we are all about making sure that they do. So anyway, we were very involved in that. Like I say, we had someone on the committee, and we got people together to go to City Hall to go with their signs and make comments, and it passed overwhelmingly. I think 11-1, maybe something like that. So that was pretty encouraging. But that was the talk, and now we got the walk, and that's harder. Yeah, and in Kansas, we and other people got involved in an issue before the Johnson County Commission. There's a big solar developer that wanted to put a big solar farm in that would, I think occupy maybe several thousand acres in Johnson County and Douglas County. And so, as is so often the case, people who live down the road said, hey, we don't want this. We don't want all these ugly solar panels down the road. I guess they want gas stations, but they don't want solar panels. So, so the commission looked at adopting some standards that were going to make it really hard for this solar farm to be developed, and this was back in the summer. So we had people who went down there and testified, and I think they heard what we said, and I think they were probably leaning against the really bad language, but I think it really helped to push them to the right side, that they had a bunch of people there who really see the value in having a big solar farm not too far outside of town. So that was another one of our issues, and then the most recent one was back in Kansas City. This is actually one of the priorities that was spelled out in the climate plan. It was use less energy, which is really probably, as I understand it, the number one strategy is before you build a lot of solar and wind, just use less energy. So we wanted the city council to adopt a very recent set of standards that was put together by this I think international group of building professionals and architects called the International Energy Conservation Code. And this was an idea that was really not popular with the home builders in town, and they were just not having it. And I believe that they got a lot of conversations with the planning department, the city council people, which we didn't really have. I mean, when I tried to set up meetings with council people, for the most part, they didn't want to meet with me, but I think they were meeting with the home builders. So anyway, it was, and then it just kind of got put off, and I think it was because we thought that it was not gonna get, passed favorably out of a committee. So finally, I think the Inflation Reduction Act was passed. And one of the provisions there is that it would provide $1 billion to cities, counties, states that adopt this 2021 energy efficiency standard. So that was mentioned by one of the city council people at a recent meeting. She said, you know, if we pass this, we will in all likelihood get some of this federal money to implement these standards. Because, you know, when you change all the standards, then all the architects have to know what they are, and the engineers and the contractors, and so you gotta get everybody up to speed, and I understand that's a pretty big job. I know we have an architect here. Do you think that's kind of a big pain for an architect when that happens?
People hate to make change, and especially if they're professional, earning their fees on the old rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They hate to stop and learn the new ones.
Yeah. So
Not everybody loves free money from the government.
Yeah. But I think it did help us. I think it did help to get this passed. So the feds are providing $330 million to cities and states that adopt this standard. If you adopt like a net zero standard, which would be much tougher, they're providing $670 million, I think. So I think the money might have gotten the ear of some of the people in the city council. If we could just get a big pot of federal money for everything we want the city to do, that'd be great. So anyway, we stuck with that for a long time, and so did other people, and it just was really maddening, actually. And I was absolutely stunned when the city council in October approved it by a vote of 9-4. I talked to the city councilwoman who really was pushing for it, Andrea Boo. She said she was shocked. I don't know. I really don't know how to account for it, but I was ecstatic that they passed it. So anyway, it's supposed to take effect on July 1st, and so now that we have that behind us, we think that all the suburbs should also do this. And some of the suburbs seem to be starting to talk that way. The city of Mission, which is pretty small, they say they plan to adopt this in 2023. I've talked to some people in the city council there, and wait, are you from Mission? No, you're from
South Kansas City, Missouri.
You're from Grandview. Okay, well, I thought somebody here was on.
Yeah, there's Mission.
You are. Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah, Lynn Bain. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So we think that there's a pretty good chance that Mission might be number 2. And so what I want to do at this point is get in conversation with all the suburbs and encourage all of them to really seriously consider this. Now, cities tend to update these codes every maybe 3 years, 6 years, 5 years. So, you know, they won't all probably be in a position to adopt this right now, but I think it's important to get it on their radar screen. Yeah.
Do you think this is something that the Johnson County Commissioners could promote?
Well, I
or
think
does it have to be
could.
each city?
Well, how much? No, I think the JOCO Commission could. I guess the question is, how much construction is there in the unincorporated part of the county? Because this, I mean, do we know? They probably have a building code, but well,
Yeah.
they've got a zoning system. So yes, I think in other words, I think we could take this to counties also. So anyway, I think the thing to do now is to get the rest of the metro on board, because, well, I think architects and builders, they don't like all kinds of different standards, do they, Bob?
They'd like for everyone to be adopting the same.
Standardization, optimization.
And they're much more prepared now for those standards to get more stringent.
They are.
Higher performing, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's one argument we can use now, is that we actually think that consistency would be really good, and we think consistency with the 2021 standard would be the way to go. So that's something that I hope that we're gonna be working on soon, now that we've got KCMO, well, now that KCMO has passed it, to get all the other cities on board. And I know some of them have some very environmentally progressive members of the city council. I mean, I think we've got some really good people in Overland Park, and I think maybe in PV, and so, you know, all of you should feel like you could take this message to your city council, because I think they really like to do what their constituents say. I mean, they're not so interested in what somebody from some other town says. They're interested in what their constituents have to say. And so I think that, so I think the real key here is for people to be very, very local and to talk with their city council people and maybe their planning departments about why this would be a really great thing. So I intend to start contacting people in our group to have them contact their local council. And I talked to a few people in Mission who said that they're gonna do that. I guess Mission, I don't know, they don't build many houses in Mission, so maybe it's sort of a moot point there, but I think it's good to have Mission on your list of towns that have passed the law, even if it doesn't really mean anything.
When you talk about members, how many members do you have in your organization,
Just
approximately?
really quick, we have 400 people in our database, but I would say in terms of activation, and I'm sure you guys have this with your own groups, who you activate, we would say probably around 20 to 30 people are activated, but you think in terms of ratios, right? For us, it's, some people are willing to do the 2 minutes it takes to tweet about a thing, Twitter. Sometimes it takes a minute to put something on Facebook, Instagram, something like that. For other people, it's the 5 minutes it takes to find your council person or whatever, and then copy paste something that you saw somewhere. Other people, it's about, oh, I'll make some signs or I'll show up to a thing. So really it's, I would say in terms of our activation, 20 to 30, but there are, you know, people that we know who are like, hey, no, I did tweet about this thing. I did reach out to, you know, my council person. So, and this is the start of Karen's section here. It's talking about, so 96%, this is a percent of congressional offices that said individual letters from constituents can have at least some influence on its members. So what this research is showing is that personal letters makes a difference, and you take that on a local level, knowing who you're actually talking to is a big part of that, and that's part of Mothers Up Front Kansas City's strategy. Something else we do, and this is going to feel very familiar, especially to church groups, is expressing gratitude. It's attitude too. But we send thank you notes. We actually go out of our way to drop a note in email even, or a physical letter to the people we know are supporting what's happening on a city council level, and building those relationships. And so I don't know how many times you've emailed your House representative, your senator, whoever, and you'll get a canned response back from them, but there is also the opportunity for conversation as long as you open up the two-way. So attitude and gratitude. And then persistence, and Karen alludes to this a lot. Karen, you could, like, honestly, you could single-handedly, like, she has helped with, like, EE standards in the city. She's really impressive, but she keeps showing up. And I think that is part of the mix is to keep doing the things, even though you don't get, like, you call into the wilderness and waiting for a response back. There's a lot of that on this list, but we have gotten feedback from Hillary Parker Thomas. She said council people have more clout when they can reference a statement specifically from a constituent. It's the most powerful thing in moving things forward. And then Andrea Booth said that persistence in contacting council people was a key to these EE standards succeeding. So we have lots of anecdotes. They all keep adding up to some of the same things, keep showing up. And it can be really discouraging, or you can feel like you are just a lone person changing out your LED light bulbs, or changing over how your church gets its energy, or making tweaks, but just know that you're not the only one who's been showing up. And I did want to go back to this. So the challenge is not everybody is on board with climate action. There's a lot of different reasons for that, and I don't want to simplify what those reasons are, because climate action is the least feel-good topic you can ever. Climate change is the least feel-good thing that's happening right now. There's no like cute silver lining to taking climate action against climate catastrophe. So it's really, really hard to talk to congregations or to talk to moms who have little kids and be like, well, catastrophe's on its way, but we can mitigate it. So there's a part of it that is about messaging, but it's also about feeling supported and loved by other people. I barely know Mothers Out Front folks on my team, except when I talk to them, I feel like I'm not so alone. I feel like I have somebody else I'm connecting with who have kids, or they have aunts, or their aunts and uncles, things like that. But when it comes down to the people, like, are we preaching to the choir, or are we trying to make new converts in this idea of what is keeping people from taking climate action? So they may feel that they're not affected by climate change, or their area, like beautiful Overland Park, Kansas City, they won't be touched by climate-driven catastrophe. They may feel that climate action is super inconvenient for them, and we are, we love our conveniences, we love our commerce. We love good business, and it might hurt bottom lines, or it might cost too much. But we act because climate action is for everyone, even the non-believers, and that might sound a little familiar to church folks, right? And I think it's that question of just you don't pray for the few, you pray for everyone. We take action for everyone, even the non-believers, and that's something that's very top of mind for us, where it's just we're not writing letters to our Congress people because we like to hear our own voice. We actually think it might make a difference if we find enough people to do it. So what's next for us? You actually might know more about this, but we have kind of met as Mothers Out Front leaders. We've talked about what we'd like to do in 2024. So some of our discussions have been around connecting with schools and PTAs to address the climate in various ways in schools, and getting kids and parents on board. So if you're part of a school community and you want to bring some climate consciousness to your school, we want to work with you. Getting energy efficiency standards passed by suburban councils. This is exactly what Karen was talking about. So, Kansas City declared a climate emergency a couple of years ago, but that's just a thing that's on paper that says climate emergency. How do you take that idea and translate it into action into the suburbs or other parts of the Kansas City and Missouri metros? And then how do we close a coal plant? ? The Hawthorne coal plant in North Kansas City, it still is a major emitter, but it's also a major part of Evergy's bottom line. Evergy being a monopoly in Kansas City, we don't have other options unless you have your own solar panels and your own solar battery, and you can live off the grid, which, good for you. But for us, the major question is, like, can we get away from coal, which they know is actually hurting their bottom line, but it's just, we're all super dependent on so many of these dirty fossil fuel companies. And so these are some of the top of mind questions for us. What do we want to do in 2024? How do we want to connect? How do we want to thread this needle as we go forward with groups just like yours? So we want to welcome your questions and hope you collaborate with us, but I think the bottom line here is that a lot of us want a lot of the same things, and we're scared, we're intimidated, we feel like sometimes, we're calling out. So it's just really great to hear call back from Jerry and Chad having us here, and I know especially from religious and spiritual connection, that's a major part of it. Are we the owners of Earth, or are we its stewards? Are we doing a good job being its steward? I think is a major question that any parent is asking themselves about their child. You don't own your child, you steward them. How do we help to steward a better planet going forward? And do you have any parting thoughts, Karen?
Well, I just feel like the biggest problem with this issue is it's just so gigantic, and I think people just cannot figure out how to make an inroad into it. And I guess I just feel like that's why it's important to focus on local things. And what I personally really am doing is I just find some specific strategy that I think is gonna make some kind of difference, and I just go for it, and I just try not to pay very much attention to all the other stuff, because if you do, you're not gonna go forward. So, you know, if we can get all the houses in the metro area built under this new standard, that supposedly will reduce their energy use by 10%. I see that's pretty good. So I'm really working on that. Yeah, so I think the key with something really, really big is to figure out where's your channel into this thing, and just don't get distracted by other stuff. Because there's just no end of stuff to feel bad about and get distracted by, and that just makes you really, really ineffective. So that's the way I'm kind of thinking about it now. So if anybody wants to help me with my energy efficiency codes in your hometown, I want to work with you. So I want you to let me know if you want to contact some city council people, because I'll be there. I'll give you talking points, I'll give you some background, I'll give you whatever I possibly can to get you to start moving your city in the right direction. Yeah.
I serve on the Sustainability Advisory Board for Leewood,
Okay.
and we are meeting in a couple of weeks. Can't get you on the agenda, but I can, begin to float the idea.
Okay.
I'm curious, when you're talking about, the energy efficiency standards for new houses.
Yeah.
If we're looking at a pie chart of like energy efficiency categories, like what slice of the pie does that take up? Does that home energy efficiency, like how big of an impact? So like if we're talking about food, right? Well, take out
Okay.
the beef
Okay.
and then the chicken and the pork and whatever.
Okay.
But if we're talking about energy efficiency,
You mean as far as
in the area, so
Yeah.
like in terms of carbon output, how big is something like a home? So we talked about that breakdown too, where your biggest emitters are it's transportation's up there, and then energy use, and that's all buildings, residential and commercial. I don't know what the residential only is. Do you?
I don't either. So
I
you're
think you
trying
can
to.
find those probably online.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll
Yeah.
vary, but you can kind of get a good
and so
sense.
you guys are focusing just on residential?
Well, that is one thing we're doing right now. See, I think that, I just started working with the mothers like 8 months ago. And someone said to me, hey, will you be in charge of getting energy efficiency passed? I said, well, okay. So that was an issue that was before the council already. And so I say, okay, go with what's happening. I mean, don't, I don't want to look, I guess I feel like don't look a gift horse in the mouth.
Yeah.
If there's an opportunity before you, then go with that. That's what I say. So that was the opportunity, and now I feel like that opportunity could be expanded. I mean, rather than trying to come up with something, I guess, out of thin air, if there's some conversation in town already,
Yeah.
I think it makes sense to plug into that conversation.
And how much was the money, the federal money?
Well, it's $1 billion total, and 330 million would go for the implementation of this new standard, which is called the 2021 IECC, International Energy Conservation Code. Then there's another 670 million to, I guess, help with the implementation of a more stringent energy efficiency code, which I think is basically net zero, which means you're producing nothing, but you're allowed to offset some. Yeah, I don't know, do you know what that is, Bob? The net zero part of that?
The intent of net zero is that the net of all you do is zero. So you might have some emissions, but you're offsetting them somehow.
Right,
Your
planting trees.
trees or prairie or
Yeah,
native plants and so on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Right.
I think we should also mention Karen had an op-ed in the Star a few days, last Sunday, wasn't it?
On
Which
Friday.
gives some of this information.
Yeah,
And
You're gonna
that
send
really,
that to me so I can blast it out.
I think you have it.
I just forwarded it.
Oh,
Now
okay.
Yeah,
I
you
sent
have
it
it.
to all of you, because Karen
Yeah.
is famous, and she's in the Kansas City Star.
Yeah.
No, but she just published an op-ed that kind of does some of this breakdown as well.
Yeah, right.
What other questions do we have for Katie and Karen? Jerry?
One of the things that vexes me is that being a Kansas resident, I don't have the same incentives that the Missouri residents do
Yeah, right.
to implement certain energy efficiency things. So one thing is to somehow communicate, maybe through Climate and Energy Project in Kansas, to try to get the Kansas Corporation Commission to equalize on both sides of the state line what Evergy is offering its customers.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
Giving
that,
federal rebate on top of a Missouri, no, there's incentive and rebate. Yeah, and Kansas had it shot like just a couple of years ago and did
They
not.
took it away.
Yeah, and they took it away. But I think, I think it really helps the picture. They already made their mind up, but I think part of it is looking for opportunity. If it's not in Overland Park or Johnson County, you can look at what's happening in Wyandotte, or you can look at other places that are trying to set up community solar. I think Independence has a massive community solar farm. Other places are considering similar things, and if you show that there is demand for that type of energy in other places, then it might be the clue. It might be part of the key to unlocking more money or potential, reemergence of that potential rebate or that incentive there.
But the Kansas Corporation Commission could force them to do that,
Yeah.
rather than
they're-
have them do it on their own.
right, they're looking at that right now.
But aren't they
Um,
supposed to come out with the final ruling, this is like immediately?
Like soon.
Pretty
yeah.
soon.
Evergy,
Yeah.
at least when I heard from them, they were pretty confident that in 2023, there would be Kansas incentives, but I haven't heard anything more recently. But everybody wants it if they,
Yeah,
more than
okay.
they did in the past. And I'm just trying to see if it's announced. I haven't seen anything announced yet.
Right, yeah, Climate and Energy Project has been working really hard to get the KCC to accept Evergy providing energy efficiency services and basically earning a profit on that, which would be fine. And Evergy has tried, I don't know, once or twice in the past to get this approved by the KCC, and the KCC said no. So it isn't really that Evergy doesn't want to do it. I think it's that they can't package it in a way that the
I
KCC will
understand
sign off on.
there's, 3 or 5 commissioners, and that keeps changing. The governor every year or so will add a new person, and our hope was that eventually we might get more enlightened people on that commission as the-
Yeah.
as the Democratic governor
Yeah,
adds new people.
right.
They have essentially been dinosaurs for a while,
Yeah.
group, and Karen's right, Evergy wants to do a lot of things that the commission is not allowing them to
Oh,
do.
really? It's the other way around.
Yeah, and that's very unusual,
Hmm.
and you both alluded to Evergy earlier, and how do we encourage them to do more? I think one of the reasons Kansas City has done so well with their performance, and all the counties that we represent, is because Evergy has become a national leader in going green. It's not because it's necessarily the smart thing, but it turns out now it is the smart thing. It wasn't when
Business
they started.
incentive, yeah.
But wind, and they have all these wind farms all over Kansas, is a really good and very efficient and low maintenance source of energy. So right now, I didn't know the exact numbers, but wind is so much cheaper than coal, but they are a corporation and they do have stockholders. And so if they borrowed money to build the plant you're referring to, they have to keep operating that plant. Even though it's costing them more to operate it, until they pay off the debt, unless the commission would allow them to shut it down and do that financing a different way. So it's one of those unusual moments when if we became advocates for Evergy and others that are doing the right thing to the commissions, a lot of these things would happen much sooner. And it's kind of remarkable. And what Kansas City has done and what the regional climate action group has done, it has really changed our potential. And I think it's a wonderful time, if you will, to embarrass our individual cities or other leadership by the action of the largest utility and Kansas City and the regional climate action plan. And go to our own government and say, well, where are we on this? Why
Yeah,
are we looking-
show them a list of
why are we
who else
looking
is
like
succeeding
dinosaurs,
because of
right?
it, yeah.
We're a progressive community, and I just think we can leverage what we have now in a unique way that normally is not available.
Well, maybe part of the climate plan in Kansas City was encouraging saying, the city of Kansas City needs to lobby before the Public Service Commission, the Missouri state regulators.
Right.
And so I think that Kansas City maybe has invested in some legal expertise now to start doing that.
Yeah.
So, maybe really, maybe the cities on the Kansas side need to start doing that too. I thought that was a great idea to have Kansas City, which is Evergy's largest customer, start saying to KCC, hey, we want solar power here. And so really people who live in Kansas, might start trying to encourage their cities, which are probably all fairly large consumers of power, to communicate that to to the regulators. So I think it's a real good move on the Missouri side, and I think it could be used elsewhere.
Now, you're bringing up a good point of just like, but who do you tell about that? It's like through our slides, it's like Mothers Up Front.
Yeah.
A lot of our list is like email your district person or things like that. And then there are just some times where you're just like, but who am I supposed to be influencing here? Do I send a letter to the commission? Can I even affect the commission? And I think there is a little bit of like bureaucracy that keeps people from action, of just being like, well, am I even, like, I live in Missouri, can I even email somebody in Kansas? I don't know. And I think it's about giving a certain level of literacy to become active in that same way. And in some ways, I think there's tooling in the digital space where it just makes it kind of idiot free, where it's just like, you don't have to know who your district person's name is or whatever, they'll fill it in for you, or you don't have to be a writer, here are the bullet points. And I think that part of that is, part of our job as a action group is to make it easy to do. So it's not like you're detangling,
You talked about 96% are affected by or influenced by personalized letters. What about these petitions where these bullet points and paragraphs are already set up, and all you have to do is give them your name and maybe your email address and your address and that sort of thing? How effective is that in comparison?
It's kind of hard to know because a lot of those are kind of for federal level stuff. Like I'm very involved with
Yeah.
I'm interested in what NRDC is doing. Like they're a lot of their action is oriented around just suing the crud out of the government, or suing the crud out of corporations or whoever it is, and that is how they want to take action. And so there's a pause I get when they're just like, hey, sign this petition. I'm like, but I thought you sued people. I don't know. The answer is like, you can't really know at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
You just keep doing it, and I think it's kind of one of those things where if it's a local issue, you can bet a lot closer that if somebody is receiving it on that end about a particular local thing. And so I think that's kind of, taking the tack of local advocacy. We do have like Mothers Out Front National, and they have their priorities and things like that, but if you focus on specific action, reaction kind of thing, I think that has a bigger impact than, click the box and fill in your,
Yeah.
autofill, blanks.
So you're saying you want to partner with other organizations, how do we do that?
Great question, I think we should throw a party.
Happy
We should
hour.
throw a party,
Happy
yeah,
hour.
happy hour.
At the poorhouse.
At the poorhouse, yeah. We've thrown happy hours before, and it's just a way, you know, we've had, you know, folks from city council show up, or from Sierra, or, you know, whoever. You know, Catherine Hayhoe has said that the greatest way to combat climate change is to talk about it and to get people in a room and like, yeah, we can sass about like how it's just like, boy, this feels really hopeless sometimes. And that's important too, to be like, oh, I feel really weird about this. Like, is it making a difference? I don't know. You have to talk, like find your community and talk about it first and foremost, how it's, you know, deeply affecting you. But then I think it's about creating webs of, like, now we know that you guys are on a green team. Who's our point of contact? When we really need you to show up for a sign, who should I actually hit up with that information? And you don't really get there unless you talk to the people, you interface, you have a one-on-one, you grab some coffee, you share a beer, you know, like, there's one thing of just having a database of people who are involved, but it's quite another of putting like faces to names and like knowing there's always that girl who shows up with giant poster boards and markers for you because she's got your back. And I think that's kind of what like community is, just knowing people have your back. So how do we do that? I think it's about getting organized and putting names on lists of people you can count on to help out on that. And so it's, you know, like we said, it's like churches, HOAs, things like that you're gonna have your point contacts, but when you really need them to show up a thing, just make sure you know what you're having them show up for and what you want them to do. Give people something to do, and I think that really helps.
Well, so I was just gonna say, I mean, I think the way that we've worked together with other groups is, you know, we know people in various groups, and so when there's a meeting coming up, you know, we're sending emails to each other saying, okay, this thing's coming up, here are the things we're gonna say, you know, please send this out to all the people in your group who might come. I think it's primarily been a matter of having a connection and conversation among people who are who are sort of the organizers of the group. Does that help you to see how that works?
So would I give you my contact information? Would
Yep.
you give me your contact information?
Yep.
I'd love to do that when we get done, yeah, and I'd like to get your information also.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's really all about just expanding our network of people, because it's just getting numbers of people to lean on the decision makers so that they know that there actually is a lot of sentiment for this and there's a lot of concern about this. And they just have to hear from people. And you know, they don't hear from very many people. And so they don't have to hear from all that many people, I think, to go, oh, we got a problem here, you know? So I think each of us carries a lot more weight than you might imagine, you know, when you make direct contact with decision makers.
And I would suggest that the new Kansas City, Missouri ordinance is evidence of that. I don't think Andrea and the others could have pulled that off without the Sierra Club and you making those calls and being in their faces. And even though they turned you down sometimes, they didn't always see you, they thought,
Right.
well, Sarah Uhlenhuth is calling, you know, and that means something. And so I really think at this moment that's more powerful than ever. And
Yeah.
so more people doing that
More people doing that.
makes a huge difference.
I mean, she said, really, that is what she said. I emailed her and she said, you know, I cannot believe it passed. And it wouldn't have passed if all you people hadn't kept pestering people about it, basically. So I believe that's what we need to do to fix the problems that we got. Uh-huh.
In February 2020, just before the pandemic hit, SSC had Johnson County Commissioners Janine Haslick and Becky Fast come talk to us, along with the Johnson County Sustainability Director. And
Yeah.
that is an instance of encouraging those people, giving them support, and them, you know, giving us information to be active within that sphere.
That's super inspiring.
Yeah.
That's great.
And we must have had 40 or 50 people that night.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
I wonder if, in a sense, with the new IRA coming out too, which has incentives for homeowners, that there is a way to broaden that discussion, because if homeowners can learn how to get even a little bit of funding, particularly for air sealing and insulation, that they can see a difference for themselves, which can in turn be, thank you, this is working, and further the whole course of the year, saying this is why we need to continue to do that, because I think Kansas City has over 800,000 housing units, well, you know, even just a few homes is a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
But 10 years ago with ERA funding, BPU and KCK had no interest loans. And I vividly remember talking to a woman who had a split level house, and she was able to get some insulation work done at the time, and her living room was above her garage. And she said, for 30 years, I could never sit in my living room. It was always so cold. And she said now it's a difference, and that really is very palpable, those stories.
Yeah, and that's like a person, that, you know, it's like talking person to person. There's, you know, if 800,000 people have that available and a bunch of people take them up on it, there's not necessarily a database somewhere where you look up and be like, oh, my neighbor did this.
Right.
Part of it is like getting to know your neighbor and maybe seeing they're putting something in, or they're doing some construction and talking to them about what they're doing about it. Because maybe they're not going to be the one who's sending the thank you letter to somebody or whatever, but you know them. And you can say, like, hey, my neighbor was really relieved. You know, of course you should ask their permission if you're going to use their name or something, but like, that's one of those things where it's like, that's not readily available to a group like ours, where we can just like look at people who scooped up a solar rebate. But encouraging your neighbors, encouraging your friends and loved ones, family, of just being like, did this work for you? You should say something. Here's an email, or come to this next thing, and just being able to talk a little bit more openly about it.
Speaking of next things, our December 12th program is going to be discussing the what can be gotten from the IRA.
Yeah.
Bill, Roush, and Griffin are both speaking,
Yes,
and you might even be there to ask some questions.
probably.
Do the new standards apply at all to any of all the apartments and other types of housing that we have in our?
I don't think it applies to apartments. I think it's single-family homes, and I think maybe like duplexes.
Okay.
I'm not sure about that part, but definitely single-family homes. And
Well, space air conditioner, or space heat pump, air conditioners
HVAC, yeah.
can be used for apartment, put in windows
Yeah.
Okay.
or multiple unit housing.
But yeah,
I'm not sure about
and this
those.
is a good instance where a group like ours can collaborate with tenants groups. So renters have a totally different, you know, they're gonna have a different approach to how to battle the climate crisis when they don't own their stuff. That's an opportunity to connect with tenants groups, because they're interested in battling this. It's gonna be lower cost for tenants. Ultimately, you know, as long as people don't get too creative and hand that buck down of installing more efficient systems in larger multifamily and multiplex housing. But that's, you just kind of look for opportunity for, you know, that's typically outside of your realm. We wouldn't say like tenants groups are like environmental groups, but we do have a thread in common.
Earthkeepers is meeting next Monday night. You do that, Earthkeepers meeting.
All right, any other questions?
Online, yeah.
All right, well, let's give Karen and Katie a round of applause. Yes, Jerry.
I always like to mention when we meet in these rooms at the south end of the village, the church, is that we're operating on 1/3 power. We have the capability to switch those lights to one bulb, 2 bulbs, or all 3 bulbs. So we've
Love
been
it.
operating
Right.
on 1/3 power tonight.
I would have never doubted you.
Way to go.
Well, we have the room for another 20 minutes. And so if you want to mingle a little bit and have some more conversation, that would be great. But I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I've got, you know, when we have these great presentations, I always have, you know, 1,000 little thoughts running around in my head. And thinking about from sustainable sanctuary standpoint, I always think kind of what's our role in this? We put great people up in front of here, but, I'm looking at, a lot of times we have lots of different organizations represented here. And we've had lots of organizations represented over the years. And so, I don't know, maybe we can have a little, discussion here. We've got Sierra Club, which has been around forever, in Kansas City, has been doing a lot. Mother Out Front is a fairly new organization. We've got congregations, obviously, which are organizations on their own. But I don't know, I'm just wondering kind of what's the partnership here? Because one of my concerns sometimes has been, we get so many different organizations kind of doing bunches of different things in the environmental community. I mean, if you look at the national level, we've got, what are some of the big national environmental organizations that we've heard of before?
NRDC.
Yeah, what else?
Green Faith.
Well, that's a faith-based one.
Yeah.
What about, what's the
Climate Reality Project.
Climate Reality Project?
Nature Conservancy.
Nature's, what's the three, I'm trying to think of the parts per million one.
Oh,
350.org?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that used to, I think of I've been doing this for 9 years now in Kansas City with with Sustainable Sanctuary. Done lots of partnering. We did a climate march down on the plaza. We had 1,000 people and, was it 1,000 people, Jerry? Didn't we have it down at the Unity congregation on the plaza?
Where we stood out on the bridge.
Yeah,
and we marched over
and
to
I
the
we
church.
partnered with 350.org. We partnered
Yeah.
with Sierra Club.
And it rained.
Yeah, well, that was the first. Yeah, it did rain. And I just think about, some of these organizations come and then they go, and some focus on this, and I don't know. I just wonder about the relationship between organizations. I guess from my standpoint, from Sustainable Sanctuary, in my mind, I think I did a presentation about there's 6 levels of engagement that we can ask our congregations to do. And one of them is appreciation. We can encourage congregations to get their members to appreciate the environment. And that could be take your church on a hike, do a picnic and, do that sort of thing. And then the 5th level is advocacy. And I just think, in my mind, when I think about, organizing congregations, I'm like, from Sustainable Sanctuary's standpoint, we can't be an expert in all of those. And so if we have hey, Mothers Out Front is our advocacy organization. So if a congregation calls up and says, hey, Chad, we really want to do advocacy. I don't have to go and, go get a degree in, community organizing. And I've been to Chicago to a community organizing school, but it'd be great if we could hey, let me hand you off to these people. Or, I don't know, so any thoughts on nonprofits and these organizations and how we can go forward? Because it feels like, Aaron, you've been around for a while too. What's your thoughts on how we should partner as organizations?
Well,
Karen, yeah.
we're always looking for more people to join with us. If you really, if you really have people in your church saying, hey, I want to get involved in a climate group, I'll give my name and number. I want to hear from them. We are very happy to be your climate action organization. If you want to send people our way.
How many people are in your SSC database?
It varies. The more I send out emails, that people hit unsubscribe. But we have about 900 in our database that we send to every
I have
month.
about 300 in mine.
We've never compared. We should compare those.
Yeah.
It may be the same.
And when I send things to the Heartland Connection, which is a Presbyterian e-news, they have over 1,000 that are aware of these meetings that we're doing here.
Now, I don't understand the difference between your email list and yours.
They overlap.
Jerry has his own private.
Yeah.
Jerry likes to send emails to. He's got.
I send them more often than he does.
Right.
You've got your core group and you have your core group and
Yeah,
there's some
and they
overlap there.
overlap. Yeah, except he has more than I do.
Yeah, okay. But they're all kind of people in sort of the
That
KC
we
metro
have
area.
encountered over the years, over the last 20 years.
Right.
We collect email addresses, and then we.
So like this email, you all are getting added, so you have to subscribe next week. If I can read you, that's one thing that's always Scribble. Yeah, Jim?
As far as cooperation of organizations, I kind of lean toward the ad hoc side rather than a formal. A few years ago, an attempt was made to combine a few different
Right. What was that
organizations
called?
like
I
Sierra
forget
Club
what-
and 350.
What was that called?
I forget.
I forget
But
too.
It was close to Kansas City Climate Coalition, something like
that
that.
was it, yeah, that was it, that Kansas City Climate Coalition.
So you tried to combine them and that went well?
Not combined,
Well,
I
at the
mean,
same time as that
Yeah.
group was trying to consolidate, efforts, there
Mhm.
was, the other one that came up with the action plan, Kansas
Oh.
City, KC Climate Action.
right,
Right, so like one of them literally had coalition and the other one didn't, and,
Mhm.
I'm not sure how that all happened, but I don't think that it was really,
Productive.
yeah. But, I wanted to suggest that, maybe, I don't know how we connect everything, but here is a small way that maybe we can make some connections. Before the pandemic, at Church of the Resurrection, I had started, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday night, it was prayers and petitions. And so the thought was I would see what our, like our advocacy, what the United Methodist advocacy folks were focusing on. And I would sort of highlight that in the evening event. It was like 20 minutes before people would arrive to go to their classes. I guess it was on Tuesday, because we used to have events regularly on Tuesdays. So, 20 minutes before the classes would start, this little sanctuary would be open, and I would write a prayer based on whatever the topic was for the month, based on UMC advocacy stuff, or just like, it's National whatever month, or whatever day or week. So I would come up with these prayers, and the thing was, we would ask people to pray the prayer that we provided, or something similar. But then also to take home, like some talking points, or there was, some stationery there, and people could write, letters, so they could do the advocacy there before they went off to their class. And, I think this church has, regular, classes, right, or group meetings, so.
Well, the Environmental Action Committee would meet once a month, and then we would do classes on our own, but most of the time we collaborated with SSC over the years.
I don't just mean a green,
Oh, okay.
group, just like, maybe it's your singles group, maybe it's your
Yes.
divorce support group,
Yeah.
or your cancer survivors group,
Yeah.
or,
P-flag or something like that.
yeah, just whatever group,
Mhm, yeah.
just, maybe we sort of like dust that off, polish it up, cause we wouldn't wanna do it just for United Methodist advocacy, but maybe that's a program that could be,
And you're saying it's a way to
Distributed.
get it in front of parishioners, basically.
yes,
Okay.
and any parishioner of any denomination. Church of the Resurrection has a tradition of making a thing and then just giving it to any and all churches.
Yeah.
And so that, we maybe could do something similar with that prayers and petitions idea.
Just as a note, I'm into data visualization because I can't see things, and there's so many groups in Kansas City, and not to have them be a coalition, but almost have like the Candyland map, or the map of who's what where.
Love that
I love
idea.
that
I've talked a lot
Candyland
about,
map.
data
Yes.
visuals, oh my gosh, I'm talking to the right girl. But literally, what are these groups super into that overlap with this group over here, and this cluster of, and here's a North Kansas City group over here, but what do they have in common with this Overland Park group?
Well, that's
And
Venn
it's
diagramming.
like,
Yeah.
diagram,
Yeah,
and
one thing I've noticed is that, I don't know if it's people just don't wanna play with other people, or if they have their own focus, and so they're like, well, I went to Sierra Club and I wanted to do this, but they were working on this, so I'll just start my own organization, and I'll call Chad and say, hey, can I do a presentation? And so, not that we all have to be like one organization, but I mean, that, in my mind, it's kind of like, okay, this is the advocacy group. I mean, we partnered with Sierra Club a bunch over the years before COVID. I mean, kind of COVID put a screaming halt on a lot of things. we've partnered with individual congregations, which look different. And so from sustainable sanctuary standpoint, I'm kind of thinking like, you know, how can we, I mean, this is a great presentation tonight. I like the idea that Karen shared of, you know, we've got this vocal thing that's happening. There's already some momentum. And so years ago, there was a Bible study called Experiencing God. And Henry Blackaby was the guy's name who, wrote this Bible study. And part of the Bible study, he said, you know, a lot of people say, hey, God, this is what I want to do, bless it. And he said, that's the wrong attitude. What you should do is see where God is working and join there. And so, like, I think that's a similar thing. It's, hey, there's some momentum already in this, and so we should join there as opposed to, but I don't know, I see a lot of different organizations, and I just feel like we sometimes feel like we're kind of pulled for our attention, and a lot of times people are just like, oh, there's too many options. I mean, I think you all shared about that, is if there's too much, you can kind of feel like
Overwhelmed.
So anyway, yeah.
One of the people that's on the Sustainability Commission and Mission is somebody that's been on the climate action, and we had the environmental fair where we did that with like 10 other, Johnson County and Northeast cities. And so she's, we're starting, our group's connecting with those other cities and trying to do things with them, sharing information and that kind of thing. All environmental stuff, mostly, so.
Yeah.
I'm excited
One of
about
the
that.
things I think about, we had this conversation over the last couple of weeks, like there are all these wonderful organizations with the best of intentions, all in our little silos, doing our own little things. So for example, when the city council is getting ready to vote on something, if instead of each little siloed organization putting together an email to the people that are connected with them about that issue, if there was one source, why should everybody reinvent an email?
Who's the source of truth?
If there's a single one, it would be nice if in these different organizations, maybe we identify some basic needs, and so there's a core group, members from any of these organizations who care about this, who are really interested in putting together an email to notify people, now's the time, get on it, versus all the other things that we're all trying to do that there's not enough time to do and not enough people to do.
Plans for communication, points of contact, core groups, brain trust, things like that. But yeah, how do you organize them? Like one of my questions too, and it's this, and I'm sure it varies from church to church and church group to church group. And I don't have a home church in Kansas City. You guys should all hit me up. But one of my questions is that advocacy, you said there's, 6 bullets, advocacy is in the mix. And there, I imagine, is some trepidation on some church goers or church groups or parishioners where they're like, well, that's not the role of the church.
Right, exactly, yeah.
I don't write to my congressman through my church, no thank you. And that's part of the, this is part of my personal journey of just feeling let down by churches where I'll find really great people, but they will absolutely not advocate for a healthy future for my child because of X, Y, and Z. And that sounds really personal. It sounds like I'm working through some bitterness because I am, and I think that goes back to that question of, is it the church's role to create advocacy on a governmental level, on picketing corporations, of encouraging people how to run, energy efficiency in their homes? You're like, wow, that doesn't sound, that's not in the Bible, but is it? And so how do you organize as church groups, and how do you guys have that delicate balance between, being Christ-led but also working on a governmental level?
Well, the National Presbyterian Church this summer did identify 5 fossil fuel corporations that they would not invest in.
Yeah.
They are not yet ready to refuse to invest in any fossil fuel corporation because fuzzy at the edge, I don't know, they had problem operationalizing it, I think.
Like turning the battleship.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But I think with things happening like the IRA, showing that government can do things, that to me is helping the churches to turn their battleship. They're seeing that the culture can be changed if we see that government will respond to our culture change.
I've heard some preachers describe themselves as having the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other, meaning they see there's a connection.
Churches do have to stay away from advocating for particular
You
legislation.
can't,
Yeah.
no, you can go after issues, but
Just not politicians.
candidates.
Yeah.
Stay away from candidates. But
Well-
you can imply.
We've chased a
Who
few
those
rabbits here at
candidates
the end. But I think we've got with mothers out front, I think some of the advocacy that they're focused on here in Kansas City is really ripe for us to get involved with, and what that looks like, I think, I don't know, I could imagine, when you ask how do we get involved, I could see if your congregation wanted to host something, then here's where it takes a little prep work here, but putting together talking points and coming over and meeting with the group and saying, okay, or maybe it's digital, you send it out and say, here's on November 1st, you're gonna send this email to these people, you're gonna follow up, and so just kind of having the turnkey package. I think that would help congregations a lot if they didn't have to, if they were just the worker bees, and I think that sounds like, Karen, you've got the knowledge to help at least inform congregations on how to advocate for this new policy for
Yeah.
how, and I think it makes sense to try to get because that would be one way that we could get our different little congregations all over the city to focus on their own, like if I live up in Kearney, Missouri, so, and, I go to a church in Liberty, Missouri, so there's lots of connections there. So, get excited, I think, COVID is not over, but we are back to kind of meeting in person and doing things, and so I want to encourage each of you to care for the environment and to use your faith to advocate for the things you're passionate about, and thanks for being here tonight.